November 1979. The cold is beginning to settle over the archipelago. In the streets of Tokyo and Osaka, people hurry along, but inside the arcades, warmth is found elsewhere. The glow of neon lights, the flicker of screens, and the crowds gathered around the machines. These places become modern refuges where one can forget the gray skies and escape for a while.
Japanese culture continues to vibrate. Galaxy Express 999 is still triumphing at the cinema, drawing in fascinated audiences. On television, Mobile Suit Gundam, which launched in April, initially struggles to find its audience but gradually gains a core of passionate fans who will soon see it as the beginning of a legend. In bookstores, the new wave of manga is asserting itself more strongly as young authors multiply their experiments.
The year is drawing to a close, and already the entertainment industry is preparing its next steps. But in the smoky halls, beneath the flashing neon lights, it is the present that matters. The game in progress, the duel at the screen, the suspended moment. Welcome to the Deep Dive. You sent us some incredible material from November 1979, specifically focusing on the Japanese amusement machine industry, drawing heavily from the Game Machine publication.
That's right.
Our mission today is to plunge into this vibrant moment, uncovering the burgeoning trends, the surprising innovations from giants like Sega, Nintendo, Taito, and Namco, and sharing some truly fascinating anecdotes.
Yeah, it's a really interesting snapshot in time.
Think of this as your shortcut to being well-informed about the arcade world on the cusp of the 80s. So let's set the stage. In 1979, what role did these international amusement machine shows play? I mean, how important were they really?
Oh, they were absolute key. These annual events, you had the AM show in Tokyo, AMOA in Chicago, IAPA New Orleans, IMA in Frankfurt, AEE in London.
Right, the big ones.
Exactly. They weren't just places to show off new machines. They were more like a vital pulse check for the entire industry, setting standards, showing the direction things were heading.
And the pace of change back then, especially with TV games coming on strong, must have been pretty wild.
It absolutely was. Dizzying, like you said. TV game trends were changing so fast it felt like even these big annual shows couldn't quite keep up.
So operators needed info constantly.
Yeah, operators, distributors, everyone. There was this constant demand for real-time information because, a hit game could be old news in just a few months.
That kind of demand, especially after a mega hit, must have caused some serious supply issues.
Oh, for sure. The classic example is Space Invaders. The demand was just overwhelming. Manufacturers couldn't produce them fast enough.
Really? How bad was it?
Get this. Even if you placed a big order at one of these major shows, you might be waiting up to 6 months for delivery.
6 months? Wow. So you order a machine for your arcade?
And you wait half a year, yeah. It really hammered home the need for, stronger connections, better pipelines between the manufacturers, the distributors, and the arcade operators on the ground.
Sounds like the industry was also growing up fast, trying to get more organized, maybe regulate itself a bit.
Precisely. You saw these industry bodies like the Japan Amusement Association, the JAA, and the Japan Operators Union, the JOU, getting much more active. They held important meetings.
And they were trying to clean things up. I saw that phrase, industry purification, in the material.
Yeah, that was the term they used. They brought in stricter rules for the exhibitions, specifically targeting things like trademark infringement, people copying games, and also the illegal use of some machines.
Like using metal games for gambling.
Exactly that.
Wow.
Metal games, those coin-op games often involving chance or redemption, were sometimes being used illicitly. These rules were really about professionalizing the whole scene.
So it was still fairly easy to start a new company, but maybe harder to be disruptive if you were an outsider.
That's a good way to put it. Entry wasn't impossible, but these tougher rules, plus the fact that the games themselves were getting more complex, well, it definitely raised the bar. It was becoming harder for newcomers to just shake things up easily. The industry was structuring itself.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Japan's own AM show. How big a deal was that on the global stage by late 79?
Oh, it was becoming a major international draw. By 1979, you had lots of industry people flying in from Europe, from America, just for the Tokyo show.
So it wasn't just a domestic thing anymore.
Not at all. Plus, massive media coverage within Japan, TV, radio, the works. And remember, this is the end of the 70s, the decade that really birthed the TV game. So this particular AM show felt like a preview, a glimpse into what everyone expected would be a much bigger, richer amusement industry in the 80s.
And the JAA was really pushing this.
Absolutely. They were very active, holding board meetings. I think the 38th was in September 79 in Osaka. They replaced their formal annual meeting with a more social gathering to build community. They even sent their managing director, Yamamoto, overseas to the AMOA and IAAPA shows.
Showing they were thinking globally.
Definitely. It was about establishing Japan's place and its standards on the world stage.
Okay, let's dive into the companies. Taito. They were clearly making moves, right? That new Osaka building sounds significant.
It really was. They threw a big party there on October 3rd. The reports called it their first proper official gathering since the whole Space Invaders phenomenon took off, so it was a statement.
And new games, too.
Yeah, they introduced Space Chaser. It was another Invader-style game, but it let players put in their initials. A small thing, maybe, but a step towards personalizing the experience. The cabinet and screen visuals were noted, too.
So what did Taito actually bring to the AM show floor?
They had Space Invader Part 2 CL, that's the upright color version. Big deal visually.
Right, color was coming in.
Definitely. And a new vertical shooter called Spaceship, plus Field Goal, the table version of Space Chaser. And they also showed some imported machines and a new flipper game.
What's fascinating, as you said, is how they backed this up.
Yeah, it wasn't just game releases. They had this huge network, something like 80 sales offices in Japan, over 10 overseas branches, constant R&D. They were building an empire, not just making games.
Okay, Sega. Another giant. They had some major announcements, too. What was the story with Monaco GP and their dual machine?
Sega held a press conference on October 1st. Very official, lots of media. The big star was Monaco GP, specifically the DX version.
DX meaning deluxe.
Exactly, the sit-down cabinet. And this game was seriously advanced for 79. It wasn't just left-right driving. It had varied courses, narrow bits, wide bits, slip zones, tunnels where your car's headlights came on,
Wow.
puddles, bridges, even gravel roads. And get this, you had to yield to emergency vehicles like ambulances, plus it had changing seasonal scenery.
That sounds incredibly immersive for the time, almost like a simulation.
It really was pushing towards that. It was timer-based, usually 1 minute 30 seconds, though adjustable, and pricey, 1,250,000 yen. A huge investment, showing where the high-end arcade market was going.
What else did Sega announce?
They launched the Sega Special Duel 2. It was a 2-in-1 cabinet, pretty clever. It had Head-On Part 2 and a new space shooter called Invigo. The hook for Invigo was supposedly these really tough invaders.
And they had that spaceship game, too.
Yeah, different from Taito's Spaceship. In Sega's, you controlled a ship with a lever, grabbing and destroying enemy ships. Different points for different enemy types and situations. And interestingly, it was apparently the first game machine with a camouflage design.
Huh. Little detail, but shows they're thinking about aesthetics. What about their overall strategy?
They were very focused on developing new games, obviously, but also software kits. They wanted to make it harder for people to just copy their hits, protecting their IP. Their motto was sort of new game, new product.
And they're expanding internationally, too, right?
Yeah. Massively. They had bought Gremlin in the US back in '78 and Esco Trading in Japan earlier in '79. That Gremlin acquisition paid off big time. Their U.S. branch revenue apparently jumped from like $37 million to over $100 million in a year, with profits exploding, mostly thanks to TV games.
That's staggering growth.
Yeah.
Okay, Namco, they seemed focused on their customers.
Yeah, they held a big reception for customers at the Hotel Kura right before the AM show started. Lots of international guests expected, aiming for a really bright and festive mood, as the source put it.
And their big game was?
Galaxian. That was their headline act. A standalone TV game. It was known for its 3-ship formation, the way enemies would attack versus wait. It was described as having thrill, suspense story. And a vibrant color screen was a major selling point.
Going beyond just shooting, adding narrative elements.
Kinda, yeah. They also showed Zero In, which was electromechanical, not a video game. It simulated jet combat, really focusing on realistic movement and that missile sensation.
Interesting mix of tech.
And they had Bombi, the second game in their sort of table flipper series. Plus, they were distributing Atari's football flipper game. Namco's whole vibe was about keeping the existing players hooked, but also expanding the audience. Kids, adults, everyone. New products for all ages.
Right. Now, Nintendo, a name everyone knows today, but what were they doing in the arcades back in November '79? It wasn't Mario yet.
No, definitely not Mario. In '79, a big focus for Nintendo at the AM show was actually their Kitty Car series. These were electric, battery-powered cars for children.
Like coin-op rides.
Exactly. They had one called the C62 Steam Locomotive and Coal Car. It was a 2-seater themed after Galaxy Express 999.
The popular anime, smart tie-in.
Very smart. They also had a London Bus Kitty Car, also a 2-seater, came in different colors, played music, had a buzzer, and another called Puzz Duet.
So their philosophy then was quite different, more about physical play, education almost.
It seems that way. They really emphasize that these were energy-saving battery cars designed to, quote, fulfill children's dreams, often with an educational touch. It's fascinating seeing the roots of that family-friendly, imaginative approach they're still known for.
But they were showing TV games too.
Oh yeah, they weren't completely out of that market. They exhibited games like Sheriff, Space Launcher, Monkey Magic, SF High Splitter, Space Fever, which was their take on Invaders Head-On, Bomb B, and even a gun game called Laser Crane Twin. So they were definitely experimenting across the board.
Okay, so beyond those big four, what other interesting things were bubbling up? You mentioned Universal's conversion kits.
Right, Universal was smart about that, offering kits to turn old Space Invaders cabinets into new games like SOS Game, Sky Plus, or Head-On Part 2. It let arcade operators refresh their floors without buying whole new machines. Great for extending the life of that initial investment.
Resourceful. Any other standout games or companies?
Well, Data East had Nice On. That sounded pretty neat. You're a pilot. Jump out, parachute down, avoid helicopters, land on a target. Controlled by a lever and one button that had different flight speeds, multiple enemies. Quite sophisticated gameplay for a table game then.
Trying to add more depth.
Exactly. Data East also showed Astro Fighter and a game called Mole Hunter, described as a comic game. Then you had smaller players like Nakamura Seisakusho with Yosaku, a color game where you chop wood and dodge woodpeckers.
Sounds quirky.
And Lee Jack Amusement Machine pushing their color version of Invader Part 2 with bonus stages. Taycan was another one, with a TV game called Captain Stuntman, and also a series of table flippers like Disco 79. Lots of variety.
You mentioned an anecdote about the flipper game's origins.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. The story goes that the modern flipper sort of evolved from this game called Wipey back in 1929. A guy named George Dupler apparently modified an old bagatelle table. You know, those pin-based games?
So tinkering with existing stuff.
Pure ingenuity. Then another guy, Nick Bain, refined it and started marketing it in trade magazines like Billboard around 1930. It just shows how innovation wasn't always top-down from big companies.
That's a great piece of history. What about the nuts and bolts, like handling money?
Crucial stuff. Asahi Seiko was promoting new coin selectors, model 720D and 730D. They boasted high accuracy, strong construction stainless steel, die-cast zinc, and importantly, anti-fraud features. Keeping the machines reliable was key.
And dealing with all those coins must have been a pain for operators.
Definitely. So a company called Nihon Shoji started offering paper bill changers, a real practical solution, especially with popular games like Universal's Galaxian or Irem's Head-On, drawing in lots of players and coins, making life easier for the operators.
Then what was the actual scene like? You mentioned Koenji.
Right. The Koenji arcade district in Tokyo sounded like it was buzzing. Places like Game Corner Keep, GameSpot Rose, Playland UFO, Space Invaders House, obviously Galaxian and Space Invaders were still huge draws. And these places stayed open late.
But there was maybe a downside to that perception.
Yeah, there was definitely some societal concern. The police agency actually did a national survey of TV game machines around July '79. The report noted how many machines were in each prefecture, but also mentioned the public view of arcades as potential hangouts for youth, maybe implying trouble, so that tension was already there.
Interesting. And metal games, were they fading out?
It was mixed, apparently. The source mentioned they seemed less popular in some spots, but were still going strong in others. It even posed the question, like, how can operators best capitalize on the metal game appeal where it still exists? Shows the market wasn't monolithic.
So wrapping this all up, looking at everything happening in November '79, what's the big picture as the industry heads into the '80s?
It's just this incredible picture of an industry absolutely exploding. The pace of innovation is staggering. Japanese games and influence are clearly going global. Profits are starting to really balloon. But you also see the growing pains.
Right, the regulation, the public image issues.
Exactly. They're trying to manage this wild growth, trying to professionalize while also dealing with being seen as maybe a bit disruptive. The foundations for that golden age of arcades in the '80s are being laid, but it's definitely not smooth sailing.
This deep dive truly shows us an industry in hypergrowth, almost defining a new entertainment landscape. But with that kind of explosive creativity and rapidly expanding reach, what do you think was the single biggest challenge for these companies as they barreled into the 1980s?
That's a great question. If we connect this to the bigger picture, I think the challenge was arguably not just about making the next hit game, though that was obviously crucial. It was maybe more about navigating that really delicate balance between pushing innovation forward at lightning speed and dealing with societal responsibility.
How so?
Well, how do you keep the excitement, the thrill, the profits rolling in while also addressing those growing concerns about youth culture, about addiction, about the image of arcades? How do you ensure the industry integrates positively into society in the long run? That was the tightrope they had to walk. And, that raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider. As entertainment continues to evolve so rapidly today with AI, VR, whatever's next, are we still grappling with these same fundamental tensions between innovation, profit, and societal impact?